If you haven't already seen it, go watch my video about how the L9050 works, because that mortise lock is very, very similar to this one. This is the L9453. The L9050 and L9453 are different by only just a few parts. So if you want to be well-rounded in this one, go watch that L9050 video first. Once you start there and then come back here, you'll have a very good understanding of what everything inside this mortise lock does and how to service it, place parts, all that good stuff. Just as a quick reminder for the Schlage L series for the mortise locks, if the model number starts with L90, it's latch only. Starts with a L94, it's latch plus bolt. Obviously we've got latch plus bolt, L94, and then the function would be 53. These days, the L9080, which is the storeroom function, which I also have a video about, that's the most popular one that we sell, but this one is incredibly popular, especially in offices and like Class A buildings, for example. So it's not uncommon for us to install 4 to 8 of these a month. Sometimes we do more, sometimes less, but this is a big seller, especially down here in Atlanta. Going back to the L9050, it's referred to in the catalog as an entrance/office lock. The L9453 is called the same, but it has the added with deadbolt. So there's the deadbolt. Again, incredibly similar even in Schlage verbiage. So with just a couple of parts, you know, added, subtracted, reconfigured, you can convert one to the other and vice versa. Not hard. And actually I'll kind of show you how later in the video. Price point wise, for the bodies at least, the L9453 is about $45 more right now. Granted, it's not just the bolt, but you know, all things equal, adding this bolt adds about $45 to the cost of the lock body. And aside from what's inside the body, you know, what you got to change out, if you wanted to convert one to the other, pretty much all you're going to need to do is change the armor front on it, because obviously you've got a bolt here with the L9453, but if you want to go to a L9050, you just change the armor front, and that's pretty much all you need to do. Now, I have a love-hate relationship with this lock. It's a solid lock, don't get me wrong, but there's one feature or function of its use that really throws end users for a loop. Let me explain the function step by step, and then I'll go into what confuses people, because it's just one minor thing. First, on these, you've got a keyed cylinder on the outside, you've got a thumb turn on the inside, you've got a deadbolt, obviously, you've got a latch, and then what Schlage calls an auxiliary latch, which is the dead latch, which, you know, affixes that latch when depressed. It runs into the strike on the frame, and if installed correctly, makes that latch dead. And then you've got the trim, which are levers in this case. Well, let me back up a second. When fully unlocked, which this is now, the latch bolt can be retracted from either side using the trim. Obviously, this is going to be the secured side. This is the unsecured side. We're going to have to use a key to make entry onto this side of the door if we had one. So when fully unlocked, the trim actuates the latch bolt. To lock it, I can do it 2 ways. Number one, I can use a thumb turn, or I can use the key. So 2 ways to lock it. When unlocking it, here's where things kind of get tricky. And this is where the end user confusion comes from. From the outside, so I've got it locked right now. Let's say I'm trying to get into the office. From the outside, I can retract the bolt using the cylinder, the key, but I can't unlock the outside trim. I can only momentarily retract it with the key. To fully unlock it, I've got to do something on the inside, and that is rotating the thumb turn an additional 20 degrees. So now I'm unlocked here. So that's where the confusion comes from. So, you know, I can lock it and I can retract the bolts, and I can still get momentary access with the key via the cylinder, but my outside trim doesn't unlock. To unlock it fully, I have to rotate that thumb turn additional 20 degrees, and now I'm good. So to get on my soapbox for a second, I have no idea why Schlage chose to label this lock the way they do. The L9453 is an ANSI F20 function, which is standardized between manufacturers. But everyone else, rightfully so, classifies this function as apartment or dormitory. Nobody else calls it office or entrance. It doesn't behave like the L9050, which carries the same name, minus, obviously the deadbolt, because when you unlock the L9050 using either the cylinder or the thumb turn, the outside trim, the lock itself, it's unlocked. That's not the case here with the L9453. What ends up happening, even after we tell customers over and over, we get a call a week or two later, not always, but more often than not, we get a call a week or two later that says, the key isn't unlocking the door all the way, or, I'm locked out even though I unlocked it. So that extra step, so I've locked it here, and it wants to set right there at about 70 degrees. That 20 degrees, that just throws everybody for a loop, because it's counterintuitive to practically every other lock that they're ever going to encounter. And I get it, if any of you are astute about Schlage, you're saying, well, just use an L9473. That's right. That's an ANSI F21 function. That is the right call here. But Schlage calls that dormitory / bedroom. Nobody else does, for whatever reason. So what happens, especially with these spec writers, is that they see entrance / office in these cut sheets, one with and one without a bolt. And they either include both in a build out, or they elect to go with one or the other. Usually just because they see the word office. And just to be completely honest, spec writers and hardware specifiers that understand locks and the end user experience are exceptionally rare these days. So it goes unchecked. And God forbid if you install a 9473 and a 9453 in the same space, they get even more confused because they look exactly the same, but they don't operate the same. So anyways, this just creates a lot of undue confusion. And I doubt it'll ever be addressed, but other locksmiths out there can probably share that it's a pain in the butt for everybody else but Schlage and whoever's writing the hardware schedule. It's just that last 20 degrees, that last click, that's the source of a lot of calls and emails. All right, so I've got the L9453 opened up with the bolt thrown to show you, what's inside of it, because I get a lot of comments and emails on these videos about servicing L-series locks that basically says, hey, I think it's good that you show all what's inside instead of just an exploded diagram, because it really helps, servicing or putting things back together. So that's why I'm going to open up with this kind of snapshot. So if you're watching this now because you want to see how something goes or how to put something back together, here you go. Now's the perfect time to hit pause before I start moving on. So let's talk about the differences between the L9050 and the 43. On the L9453, there's not a standoff post right here, and there's not a transfer lifter here, because there's a giant bolt, obviously here, but the entire bolt assembly piece is blocking that way for both of them. So obviously you can't have them there. So there's three differences out of the gate. Moving on, you've got the simultaneous retractor, which is this part right here. And sometimes when you're taking the lock cover off, especially you can see right here with the amount of grease that's on there, because this sits flush against the lock case cover, there's so much grease, sometimes when you pull this off, this will still be stuck to it. So if you open yours up and you're like, where's mine at? Just flip it over, it's probably right there. Putting them back in is pretty easy. It just goes around the bottom post, and then right here on the, God, what was the name of that thing? Retractor link, that's the retractor link, sorry. So that's how it goes. And then, like I said, because it normally sits flush, it's wanting to dip down on its own, but normally it'd be like right here. So that's how it sits. To pull this back, it's going to be very hard, but I'm going to kind of show you what the simultaneous retractor does. Let's imagine that we're locking or unlocking with a thumb turn because it's easier. I'm going to pull back, and you can see that the bolt is making contact with the simultaneous retractor, which is going to help speed things along. It's not used when throwing per se, because see, the hub, which we'll talk about in a second, does that. But as things start to get moving back, simultaneous retractor is not going to move until the bolt makes contact with it, which kind of helps, you know, the hub, which we'll talk about in a second, kind of move things along. More importantly, though, it's kind of a stabilizing piece because it keeps, you know, everything kind of in place in the lock, which is why it rests up against that lock case cover. So that's kind of the two primary functions of the simultaneous retractor. The other key important piece, let me get the dead latch back in place. This is very hard because there's so many springs wanting to push against things. The other main piece is this, which is actually two pieces. You've got the entrance hub, which couples with, let me put this back together, lock it back out. The entrance hub, look at that, see, it's all wanting to fall out. The entrance hub, which couples with this piece right here, which is called the cam follower. The cam follower rides along a groove. It's kind of hard to see. Kind of lift it up best as I can. There's a groove, starts right here, goes all the way through here. It's part of the bolt. That cam follower rides along it and kind of does two things. First, if I can get it back, wants to unlock it, and then this last little bit, that's that 20-degree action I said that causes kind of consumer confusion. It's going to pull this retractor hub away from the hub so that the outside trim can become unlocked. So remember that last 20 degrees I said you got to do from the inside of the thumb turn? That's that last action from the cam follower on the bolt. So that's basically all there is different between the two. Obviously things are floating out of the way here, so you don't really get a good presentation, but I've got spring, spring, spring all fighting against me. But we'll get that fixed in a second. I'll show you how to put the cover back on because there's some tricks here. Actually, this one came out too. Put that back in there. But that's all the difference is, so let me take a break. We'll put this back together. So, just to recap, if I need to convert an L9050 to an L9453, I'm going to take out the standoff post, the transfer lifter, and the regular turn hub. In their place, I'm adding the deadbolt, the simultaneous retractor, and then the two-part coupled piece of both the entrance hub and then the cam follower, which is, you know, pretty clever engineering that I can drop 3 parts, add 4, which are all available through aftermarket purchase, and convert, you know, the function from latch only to latch plus bolt. You know, certainly cheaper than buying a brand new lock body. Like I said earlier, about $45 difference, though, you know, those 3 parts going to add up to a little bit more, but certainly cheaper than the lock body itself. So I'm going to try to put this one back together. This one's not a fun one because of all the springs involved, and this one's under the cam follower and hub are under pretty good pressure. So here's the trick, at least I found it. I'm no expert with it. This is a secret weapon, the thumb turn, because this is going to help get this guy where he needs to be. I'm going to make sure, yeah, we're in place here with the auxiliary latch. It's not quite in. Now it is. Now it's not. But, you know, that's we can overcome that. So everything's where it should be. Just going to slowly place this on. And I'm going to migrate, move there. The auxiliary latch clicked into place. Now it's time for the secret weapon. Use that to pop that in place. I'll press against it real quick. Good, because the bolt's thrown, obviously that's caught, which in a way helps stabilize it. Keep pressure against the case cover. Start tightening it down. Good. Good here. Remember in my last videos I stressed you want to make sure everything's pretty flush. Obviously this side's going to sink down a little bit when I tighten this off. But we'll see. Now we're also going to take our secret weapon again, and let's see, there's the unlock side. Use it. There. Now we should be able to use that. If we had the spindle and the trim still attached, we could test it, but you know, this is good. Bolts throwing. 20, 70, 20. We're good. And actually you can see this is kind of a better representation, that last 20 degrees. So we've got the bolt thrown, retracted, but we can still see that the hub is engaged. And then we'll do that last 20, which has moved it out of the way. So now that the spindle, the trim can retract the latch. So the lock's fully unlocked. So there's the L9453. You know, a little confusing for some people out of the gate. You know, you've heard my nitpicks about it, but other than that, it's a freaking solid lock. We never get callbacks on these. If we do, it's because the lever spring return cassette, which is on the outside of the door, you know, those go bad, but that's like a, I don't know, $40, $50 fix, plus your time, your labor, whatever it may be. But everything in here stays solid for a while.